Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to, just for a moment, imagine you're sitting around a campfire. It's late. The woods are dark and quiet.
It's the kind of quiet that makes you listen a little harder.
Exactly. And we're going to tell some stories tonight. But these aren't just spooky tales. These are pulled from the official record, from the cold, hard logs of the United States Navy.
We're talking about radar data, sonar pings, FLIR imagery, the work of men and women who spend their entire lives identifying what's supposed to be out there on the open ocean.
And tonight, we're focusing on what they found that wasn't supposed to be there. We're going to cut through all the noise, all the speculation, and get to the core capabilities of these things.
What can they actually do? We're talking about moving between air and water, like they're the same thing, transmedium travel.
We're talking about speeds that, well, that shouldn't be possible. And a silence. A profound, chilling silence where there should be the roar of an engine.
So if you've ever felt buried under the mountain of UFO lore, think of this as our shortcut through the woods, directly to the unsettling truth hidden in the data. We're starting with the modern cases from 2019 because what the Navy saw then, it changes everything.
Let's start with the story of the USS Omaha. Picture it. July 15th, 2019. You're in the Southern California operating area west of San Diego.
This is the Navy's backyard. They know every current, every rock, every vessel that's supposed to be there. The weather is perfect, calm seas, clear night. No excuses for bad sensor data.
And around 10 o'clock at night, a radar operator sees it.
A blip.
Just a single, stable blip on the screen. And it's moving at about 40 to 55 knots. Now, that's weird right away.
Why weird? What does that speed tell you?
Well, it's too fast for a drifting boat or, a buoy, but it's way too slow for a jet or a missile. It's in this uncanny valley of speed.
And it's electronically a ghost, a complete ghost. This is maybe the most crucial part. It has no AIS, the civilian ship tracker. It has no aircraft transponder. And most importantly, it's not squawking an IFF code, the military's friend or foe signal.
So in this highly controlled military airspace, you have an unknown object that is completely silent electronically.
It's a bogey, a true unknown. And so protocol kicks in. They slew the FLIR camera, the infrared system, to get eyes on it.
And what does the operator see on his screen?
He sees a sphere. A small, perfectly stable, glowing sphere. And the chilling part is the heat signature.
Break that down for us. Why was the heat signature so strange?
Well, think about anything that moves. A car engine is hot. A drone's motors are hot. A jet engine puts out a massive plume of fire, right? You see hot spots.
A source of the propulsion.
Exactly. The FLIR image of this sphere showed an even heat. The whole object was just uniformly warm. No hot spots, no exhaust, no engine. It was like looking at a warm bowling ball hanging in the sky.
So it's generating lift and forward momentum without any visible or thermal sign of propulsion.
Precisely. It's just moving. And it's moving smoothly. No wobble, no fighting the wind, just a controlled, silent flight.
And it starts to descend.
Yeah. And not like it's crashing. It's a slow, controlled, deliberate descent toward the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Everyone on the bridge is watching the screens, holding their breath.
What are they expecting to see?
A splash. A big one. Even a small object hitting the water at over 40 knots is going to create a huge disturbance. Spray, foam, a flash of heat on the infrared as the water gets churned up.
But that's not what they saw.
That is not what they saw. The operator watched the glowing sphere get closer and closer until it touched the waterline, and then it was just gone.
Gone.
Vanished. From the thermal camera, it just winked out of existence. The radar operator logs it as splash, but that's just their term for losing contact at the surface. There was no visible splash. None, no spray, no foam, no thermal bloom.
I think you compared it to a drop of mercury.
It's the only way to describe it. It didn't break the surface tension, it just entered. Like the water wasn't a barrier. Like it just phased from one medium into the next.
A transmedium event.
Yeah.
But they didn't lose it entirely, did they?
No, because the Omaha has sonar. For a few seconds, the sonar operator gets a faint, brief return from the direction the sphere disappeared. A ping.
And the acoustic signature of that ping.
It didn't match anything. It wasn't a whale. It wasn't a Russian sub. There was no engine noise, no propeller sound. Just a brief, solid object moving underwater for a moment before it, too, went silent and vanished from their sensors completely.
So it went from the air into the water and continued to operate, all without making a sound or a splash.
That's the story of the USS Omaha, a single, impossible sphere. But that same summer, it got a lot weirder.
This brings us to the destroyer swarm. If the Omaha was a ghost story about one ghost, this is a story about a haunting.
A full-blown infestation. We're talking about multiple Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The USS Kidd, the Russell, the Peralta, the Paul Hamilton. These are the apex predators of the surface fleet.
And they're all networked together with the AGIS combat system.
Right. So this isn't one ship's radar acting up. If one ship sees something, all four see it. The data is shared, cross-referenced, and validated in real time. It's designed specifically to eliminate false positives.
And what did all four ships see simultaneously?
A swarm, multiple objects, just like the one the Omaha saw, tracking their flotilla for hours.
Hours? How long are we talking?
The logs show some of these objects were tracked continuously for over 90 minutes. Let that sink in. Your average commercial drone over the open ocean, you might get 20-30 minutes of flight time if you're lucky.
And these things were just hanging out for an hour and a half.
Hanging out, pacing them, moving laterally against the wind. Again, no wings, no rotors, no exhaust. Just these silent, glowing orbs moving with intelligent, controlled purpose.
And the Navy's reaction tells you everything you need to know about how serious this was.
Oh, absolutely. The source material states the ships entered a restricted communications posture.
Which means?
Radio silence. They stopped broadcasting. You only do that for two reasons. You're about to do something very secret, or you've encountered something very, very threatening, and you don't want it to know you're talking about it.
They were trying to hide from the things that were swarming them.
That's the operational implication. They recognized this was not normal, not friendly, and potentially a major intelligence threat. They were being observed by a superior technology, and they knew it.
And just like with the Omaha, this encounter ended at the water's edge.
It's the same signature move, the same calling card. The altitude readings on multiple objects from multiple ship sensors all began to drop. A slow, controlled descent.
And again, no splash.
The logs are explicit. Clean losses of altitude. Thermal signatures just stopped at the waterline. No debris, no impact. They just, one by one, slipped beneath the waves and were gone. The same impossible, non-disruptive transition from air to water.
It's a pattern, a consistent physics-defying pattern.
Exactly. And the most chilling part of this whole story is this pattern isn't new. The technology might be from 2019, but the stories are old.
So let's pull back the curtain on the historical record. If you think what we just described is strange, you need to hear about the silent things that have been pacing our warships from the depths for 70 years.
We're going deep now, into the cold, dark water of the Cold War. Let's talk about the USS Waldron, a destroyer in the Caribbean. The year is 1950.
What was naval technology like in 1950?
Loud, very loud. Steam-powered ships, diesel submarines. The ocean was a noisy place, and the sonar was, relatively basic compared to today.
And yet, the Waldron's sonar operator gets a contact.
He gets a solid contact. The report describes it as larger and more defined than a whale or a rock formation. It was a manufactured object. But the impossible part, the part that must have made the hair on his neck stand up, was the sound.
Or the lack of it.
The complete and utter lack of it. No engine noise, no propeller cavitation, which is the sound of water boiling around fast-moving blades. It was a massive, solid object moving through the water in total, deafening silence.
And it wasn't just passing by.
Oh no, it was pacing them, matching their speed, matching their course corrections, a silent shadow in the deep, watching a U.S. warship. And occasionally it would perform these brief, incredible accelerations far beyond what any known submarine of that era could do.
But the real connection to 2019 comes when it decides to leave.
It comes straight up, a rapid ascent, and the sailors on deck saw it emerge. The report says it created a gentle parting of the water, not an explosion of spray, it just surfaced.
What did it look like?
A disc. A classic disc-shaped craft that hovered silently for a moment right at the waterline. And then it shot straight up a vertical ascent so fast that the radar only held a lock for a second before it was gone.
Gentle entry, vertical exit. It's the same playbook.
70 years apart, the same physics. Now to jump forward to the 1970s. The USS Memphis, a nuclear fast attack submarine. These guys are the best of the best. Their entire world is sound.
And they're deep in the North Atlantic, the hunting ground for Soviet subs.
Exactly. And their advanced sonar picks up two contacts, two massive silent objects just sitting on the seafloor, far deeper than any Soviet sub would dare to go.
Silent and stationary.
For a time. And then one of them moves. And you have to understand, the way the sonar operator described this breaks physics.
It wasn't about speed.
It wasn't about speed at all. It was about location. The object was at point A. And in the next instant, with no transition, no acceleration, no sound, no disturbance in the water, it was at point B, miles away.
Relocated.
Instantly. Imagine a mountain on the seafloor just deciding to be 5 miles to the left. It's that impossible. To move that much mass that quickly should create a tidal wave. It should make an incredible noise. But there was nothing. Just gone from here, and now it's there.
That violates inertia, momentum, everything we know.
Everything. And then the second object did the exact same thing. The sonar team was so baffled, they had to invent a new term for their report. They called it an unidentified non-acoustic event. They had a solid object on their screens that behaved in a way that matter is not supposed to behave.
Sometimes, though, these things aren't silent and stealthy. Sometimes they light up the whole ocean.
Right. Which brings us to the luminous underwater phenomena. Take the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt, a massive aircraft carrier, in 1958. Multiple witnesses, including an Air Force intelligence officer named George Filer, saw it.
What do they see?
A brilliant blue-white glow approaching the ship, moving silently. And as it got close, it began to descend. But before it even touched the water, a circle of light appeared on the ocean beneath it, as if it was projecting its energy downwards.
And the entry.
The same impossible, gentle entry. No splash, no displacement. It just slipped into the illuminated water and was gone.
And then it came back out.
Minutes later, the water started to glow again from within, and then the object just rose vertically in a single smooth motion out of the sea. No spray, no wake. It just ascended and accelerated into the night sky.
So it's not always hiding. Sometimes it's putting on a show.
It seems that way. The USS Knox, a frigate south of Hawaii in 1973, had an even more direct interaction. A huge glowing circle of light appeared on the seafloor directly beneath their hull.
And it followed them.
Perfectly. The captain, probably trying to test it, changed speed. The circle of light under the ship slowed down with them. He sped up. It sped up. It was mirroring their every move, pacing them from the abyss.
That rules out any kind of natural phenomenon, like bioluminescence. That's intelligent tracking.
Undeniably. And its departure was even more dramatic. The circle suddenly shrank, contracted in on itself, and then a brilliant column of light shot straight up out of the water, vertically. It left behind this weird, narrow plume of water, but no foam, no debris, just a clean, focused exit of immense energy.
And this behavior wasn't isolated. You have the USS Caliente in '67, an oiler in the Pacific.
Same story, different ship. The crew saw a whole formation of bright lights moving in parallel with them, deep underwater. They maintained perfect spacing, adjusted course when the ship did.
And their exit.
All together, the entire formation rose to the surface and shot vertically out of the ocean, almost simultaneously, without a sound and without a splash. Coordinated, silent transmedium capability demonstrated by a group. It's the 2019 destroyer swarm, but happening in 1967.
We've stayed mostly in the water, but there's a case from the Arctic that provides some of the clearest, most unsettling photographs we have.
The USS Trepang, 1971. A Sturgeon-class nuclear sub on a mission under the polar ice cap. The absolute most remote, desolate place on Earth.
And they surface.
They break through the ice to raise their periscope, and the officer sees something. Things in the sky that have no business being there, so they start taking pictures.
And these aren't blurry, shaky photos.
No, these are clear periscope photographs, and they show two distinct objects. One is a long, metallic, cigar-shaped craft. No wings, no tail, no engines, just a smooth cylinder hanging in the Arctic air.
And the other?
The other is a classic disc, a saucer shape with a pronounced dome on top. And they're not just drifting. The photos show them moving, changing position relative to each other. They are under intelligent control.
In 1971, in the middle of the Arctic, what could they have been?
Nothing we had. Nothing the Soviets had. The shapes defy aerodynamics of that era. It's like finding a high-definition television in a black and white movie. The technology is out of place, out of time, and in a place it should not be.
So far, we've talked about observations, radar tracks, photos, sonar pings. But now, now we have to talk about the times these things left their mark. Physical evidence.
This is where the story gets sharp edges. We move from sensor data to actual damage, to scars.
Let's start with the USS Stein, a frigate in the Eastern Pacific, 1978. It starts with a problem with their sonar.
Yeah, their brand new, top-of-the-line ANS-2S-26 sonar system started failing. The signal became distorted, the range dropped. Something was physically wrong with it.
And this system is housed in a huge rubber dome under the ship's bow, right?
A massive dome, designed to be incredibly tough. So when they finally get the ship into dry dock and lift it out of the water, they see it. The dome is shredded.
Shredded how?
Not like it's scraped against a reef, The reports describe long, deep gouges, tears in the thick rubber several feet long with curved outlines. The report literally uses the phrase resembling claw marks.
Claws. What in the ocean has claws big and strong enough to tear apart a military sonar dome? A giant squid.
That was the first theory. But when they analyzed the damage, they found something lodged deep inside the tears. Fibers. And these fibers weren't from any known animal.
What were they?
The lab analysis said they had uncommon density and resistance to compression. They were incredibly strong and they resisted chemical breakdown. They weren't whale skin, they weren't squid tissue, they were something else.
So something with massive, hard, claw-like appendages attacked a U.S. Navy warship, tore into its sonar, and left behind traces of an unidentifiable, unnatural material.
That's what the physical evidence says. The case was officially classified as anomalous, unresolved, a deep-sea encounter that left deep physical scars.
If the Stein is about physical scars on a ship, the Cash Landrum case is about physical scars on human beings. This one is terrifying.
This is maybe the most harrowing close encounter on record because of the medical evidence. Huffman, Texas, 1980. Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and her young grandson Colby are driving home at night.
And they see a light.
They see a massive diamond-shaped object hovering low over the road ahead of them, blocking their way. It's pulsing with an orange-red light and blasting heat downwards.
How much heat?
So much heat that the car's metal body became painful to touch. Betty Cash got out of the car, and the heat was like standing in front of an open furnace. The dashboard vinyl started to soften and melt.
And as this is happening, they hear a noise.
The thumping of helicopter blades. Dozens of them. As the diamond-shaped craft begins to slowly rise, a whole formation of military helicopters, many identified as huge CH-47 Chinooks, swoops in and surrounds it, escorting it away.
So this wasn't just some random light. This was an event that had a massive, immediate military response.
A huge response. But the real horror story starts after the object is gone. Within hours, all three of them become violently ill.
What were the symptoms?
It was classic acute radiation poisoning. Their skin swelled up and blistered. Their hair fell out in clumps. They had nausea, vomiting. Betty Cash was hospitalized, and she suffered permanent, debilitating health damage for the rest of her life.
And the doctors confirmed it was radiation exposure.
The hospital records are meticulous. They confirmed exposure to dangerous levels of ionizing radiation. The source was undeniably that hovering object.
So you have 3 injured citizens, confirmed radiation burns, and at least 23 military helicopters at the scene. The government must have taken this seriously.
The government pretended it never happened. Every single agency, the Army, the Air Force, every nearby base, formally denied having any aircraft in the air that night. They stonewalled. The family's lawsuit was dismissed.
They were poisoned by an unknown technology being escorted by our own military, and then they were abandoned.
That's the chilling reality of it. The medical evidence is undeniable. The government's presence is undeniable. And the official denial is absolute. It's a story of physical horror compounded by a profound betrayal.
From radiation, we go to something almost folkloric. The Kelly Hopkinsville encounter in Kentucky, 1955. This wasn't a distant light, this was a home invasion.
A multi-hour siege of a small rural farmhouse. 11 witnesses, including kids, all telling the same consistent story. It started with a light landing in the fields nearby.
And then things came out of the dark.
Small figures. About 3.5 feet tall, with huge pointed ears, long arms with claw-like hands, and their bodies gave off this faint silvery glow.
And what were they doing?
They were trying to get in, peeking in the windows, climbing on the roof. The family inside was, understandably, terrified. The men grabbed their shotguns and rifles and started shooting.
And the gunfire.
This is the part that breaks your brain. They said when they hit one of the creatures with a shotgun blast, it would just flip over backwards, float for a second, and then dart away into the darkness completely unharmed.
Impervious to bullets.
As if they were made of something else, or protected by some kind of energy field that they couldn't be hurt.
When the police finally arrived, what did they find?
They found a terrified family in a house riddled with bullet holes. The evidence of the fight was everywhere. But the creatures,
gone.
Completely gone. No bodies, no blood, no footprints, even in the soft dirt. The only strange thing they found was a luminous green patch on a fence post where one of the creatures had been perched.
So Project Blue Book, the Air Force investigation, what did they conclude?
Their official explanation was great horned owls.
Owls.
Owls, which It doesn't quite explain the silvery glow, the resistance to shotgun blasts, or the 11 consistent witnesses. Even Blue Book had to privately label the case unexplained. It was a close-range physical interaction with entities that simply did not obey the rules of biology or physics.
So if these things are real, if they can damage our ships, harm our citizens, and lay siege to our homes, you have to ask, what happens when the people who see them try to speak out?
And that's where the story takes another dark turn, into the control narrative, the effort to enforce silence. Because the more credible the witness, the more aggressive the denial.
Take the Exeter, New Hampshire case in 1965. It started with a civilian, Norman Muscarello, but was quickly backed up by a police officer, Eugene Bertrand.
And Bertrand wasn't just any cop. He was an Air Force veteran. He was a trained observer. And he saw the exact same thing Muscarello did. 5 bright red lights in a perfect semicircle, moving silently. There was a dark, solid mass behind them.
And they interacted with it.
Bertrand tried to signal it with his flashlight, and the object responded. It tilted and started moving slowly towards them before suddenly shooting up at an insane angle and disappearing.
What did the local Air Force base, Peace AFB, say? Their radar must have seen something.
Radar saw nothing. And their official explanation for what the trained officer and the civilian saw was KC-97 tanker planes on a training exercise.
Which Officer Bertrand immediately rejected.
Of course he did. He knew what a tanker plane looked like, sounded like. They're huge, they're loud, they can't hover, and they certainly can't ascend vertically at hypersonic speed. His expert testimony was completely ignored in favor of an official story that made no sense.
It's a pattern. The Goose Bay intercept in Labrador in 1951 is even more stark. This was military on military.
Or military on something else. Base radar tracks an object doing 700 miles per hour. Then it just stops. Dead stop. Hovers, then shoots straight up, vertically off the scope.
So they scramble a jet.
They scramble an F-94 Starfire. The pilot, Lieutenant Baldwin, gets a visual. He sees a brilliant white light, and he tries to close in for a better look.
And the object's response.
It plays with him. It accelerates away, perfectly matching his approach speed, maintaining the distance. It demonstrates superior tactical awareness. And then when Baldwin gets too close, it just ascends vertically, leaving the jet far below its maximum flight ceiling.
So our best pilot and our best jet was completely outclassed.
Utterly. And even Project Blue Book couldn't explain this one away. Their final report admits, object demonstrated capabilities inconsistent with known aircraft. That's as close to an official admission as you're ever going to get.
Sometimes the effort to silence witnesses isn't an official report, though. Sometimes it's much more personal and much, much stranger.
The Men in Black, the MIB phenomenon. During the wave of sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida in the 1980s, this became a huge part of the story.
What is the classic MIB encounter like?
It's pure uncanny valley. Multiple, totally unrelated witnesses reported visits from these men. They always wore black suits, drove unmarked black cars. They had pale, waxy skin and blank, emotionless expressions.
And they claimed to be government agents.
Vaguely. They'd say federal agent, but never show a badge, never give a name. And their questions were bizarre. They weren't interested in what the witness saw in the sky.
What were they interested in?
They were obsessed with one thing. Who did you tell? Who else knows? Did you take pictures? Where are the negatives? Their entire purpose was information control.
And there was always a threat.
A quiet, chilling threat. One couple who had photos were told, in a flat monotone, you will not need them. They are not yours to keep. A worker from the Naval Air Station was told it would be in his best interest to forget what he saw.
So the goal is to erase the evidence, to enforce the silence.
Exactly. The MIB are the cleanup crew for reality. Whether they're government agents in a bizarre psychological operation or something else entirely, their function is clear: to stop the documentation and dissemination of these events.
And finally, let's look at a case where the evidence was as clear as day, literally. The Kura incident in Japan, 1972.
This is a fantastic case because it's so simple and so undeniable. A group of schoolboys in a rice paddy see a small metallic object shaped like a little flattened dome, maybe the size of a hat. It's hovering and rotating silently right in front of them in broad daylight.
They got pictures.
They got pictures. And it was zipping around in these impossible zigzag patterns. At one point, one of the boys actually claimed he grabbed it or touched it.
What happened?
He got burned. Minor burns on his hands, but verifiable physical evidence of contact with a high-energy object. And there was more.
In the rice paddy itself?
Yeah. The rice plants where the object had hovered were stunted and yellow. The soil underneath was compacted and strangely dry. as if it had been exposed to intense heat or pressure.
So you have multiple witnesses, daytime photos, physical injury, and botanical evidence. That's an open and shut case.
And it was completely dismissed, ignored. The Kira incident is the perfect microcosm of the whole phenomenon. Even when the evidence is tangible right there in your hands, the system is designed to look away, to deny, to forget.
So after this journey through 70 years of military logs, eyewitness reports, and physical evidence, what's the one story all of these different sources are telling us?
The story they tell is one of consistency. The technology changes, the decades pass, but the behavior of the phenomenon remains the same. Whether it's the USS Memphis in the 70s or the destroyer swarm in 2019, you see the same impossible physics at play.
This isn't just a collection of unrelated weird events. It's a cohesive operational profile.
It's a technology that treats air and water as interchangeable, a technology that can negate inertia and momentum, a technology that operates with complete impunity in our most heavily defended airspace and our deepest oceans. This isn't human engineering, it's something else.
It's a presence that demonstrates not just a lack of identification, but a lack of the physical limitations that bind everything we build.
Precisely. The Navy logs confirm these are intelligently controlled objects, not weather balloons or swamp gas. And the control narrative, the MIB, the official denials, they confirm that there is a powerful incentive from somewhere to keep us from looking too closely at this truth.
We have scars on a Navy warship. We have radiation burns on American citizens. We have trained pilots and police officers telling us that what they saw was real and defied explanation. The question then isn't really if these things exist anymore.
The real question is how. How has a technology this advanced managed to operate on a global scale for the better part of a century, right under our noses, without ever being truly identified? What else can it do? And what is hidden inside that deep, profound, and enduring silence? Welcome to the deep dive. Tonight, gather close, because we're not just looking at files, we're telling a story.
A ghost story, almost.
Yeah, you could say that.
Right.
We are pushing past the blurry videos and the sanitized reports to unpack one of the most chilling and direct claims of a military alien firefight in American history.
The 1978 McGuire Air Force Base incident.
Our whole mission here is to piece together what happened on that one cold night in New Jersey using everything we can find. Veteran testimony, whistleblower accounts, old military forums. We're trying to see what really happened in the dark.
And it's so important to start this story by looking backwards, from where we are now.
With the Pentagon disclosures.
Exactly. The government finally admitted publicly that these UAPs are real. They exist. They defy physics. That's the tip of the iceberg they've shown us.
But our deep dive tonight is about what's under the water.
It's the massive, hidden part of the story that whistleblowers have been talking about for decades. The government will admit what's flying around, but they go completely silent on who is flying them.
And more importantly, what happens when we meet them? Face to face. On the ground.
That's the whole game.
That's the distinction that changes everything. We're leaving the world of high-altitude footage behind. This isn't about a blip on a screen.
This is about a confrontation.
So if you're ready, we're going to travel back from the high-def confirmations of today all the way to a freezing January night in 1978. Out in the pine forests of New Jersey.
Where a single sentry, a single gunshot, and a creature that was not of this earth all came together on a lonely stretch of runway.
Okay, so to really get why an incident from 1978 suddenly feels so immediate, so relevant, we have to talk about that huge shift around 2020, the Pentagon pivot.
Right. And it's crucial to understand this wasn't the military suddenly deciding to be transparent.
No, this wasn't a friendly gesture.
Not at all. The sources are really clear on this. Those briefings in early 2020, they were a reaction.
Yeah.
The Pentagon was under immense pressure.
From who exactly?
Investigative journalists.
Yeah.
For one. But also high-ranking military insiders and even members of Congress. They had been pushing for years. Leaks were happening, and the government had basically lost control of the story.
So they were forced to the table.
They had to confirm the reality of these phenomena because they could no longer deny them.
And the smoking gun, the evidence that really broke it open, was this incredible footage from U.S. fighter pilots.
Yes, and that's the key. This wasn't some shaky cell phone video. This was data.
Government property.
Captured by some of the most advanced optical and infrared sensor systems on the planet. From inside multi-million-dollar fighter jets. You can't just dismiss that as a weather balloon.
So what was it about this footage that was so undeniable?
It wasn't just that they saw something. It was what they saw it do. The craft they filmed were doing things that, well, they just violate our known laws of physics.
We're talking about hypersonic speeds?
Hypersonic speeds, yes, but the real mind bender was the turns.
The instantaneous changes in direction.
Exactly. No deceleration, no banking like a normal aircraft, just an immediate 90-degree turn. Poof. It's going in a completely new direction.
And I think it's important for you listening to really let that sink in. An F-18 pilot trying to pull a maneuver like that.
The G-forces would crush them.
Yeah.
Instantly. The airframe itself would likely disintegrate.
So when the military officially authenticated that footage, they weren't just saying, we saw a weird light.
They were admitting that something was operating in our skies that defies inertia. Something that suggests a propulsion system that can, essentially negate gravity.
Which has this massive strategic implication, right?
It's a profound admission of failure. The U.S. government confirmed that a technologically superior force was flying with impunity through its most restricted airspace.
And they had no way to stop it, no way to control it.
It legitimized the entire mystery. And of course, the second that happened, everyone immediately started looking back at the old stories, the historical claims.
But this disclosure, this transparency, it also made a lot of people suspicious.
Oh, absolutely. Many longtime observers saw it as what they called an orchestrated drip feed.
Just giving us enough to quiet us down.
A carefully managed release of the bare minimum designed to satisfy the immediate public outcry while keeping the real secrets still under lock and key.
And that's where the whistleblower narrative really ignites.
It's the core of their claim. If the government is admitting this much now, imagine what they've been hiding for the last 70 years.
The recent footage is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's the perfect analogy. If the videos we've seen are a single drop of water, then the historical claims, they're a vast ocean.
An ocean that's been intentionally frozen over by decades of secrecy.
The claim isn't just that the military saw these things. It's that they recovered them,
Retrieved them.
studied them, and maybe even replicated their technology.
Like interstellar corporate espionage.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. The claims are very specific. You hear whistleblowers, some with service records you can actually verify, talk about breakthroughs that were quietly folded into our own aerospace programs.
Yeah.
Advanced composite materials that are impossibly light and strong. Radar invisible stealth coatings. Even very early, very rudimentary attempts at anti-gravity propulsion.
And what gives that claim any weight, what keeps it from being just pure fantasy, is that it's exactly what the military is designed to do.
It's standard operating procedure.
Think about it. After World War II, what did we do with captured German technology? The V-2 rockets, the Messerschmitt 262 jet fighters.
We didn't just look at them, we seized them, shipped them home, took them apart piece by piece, and reverse engineered every single innovation.
We built our own rocket and jet programs on the back of their technology.
That process is the logical blueprint for how we would, allegedly, study a recovered craft. The military protocol is to exploit any strategic advantage. The only difference here is the origin of the tech.
It's not from another country, it's from another world.
Allegedly.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's step off the solid ground of government videos and into the deep end of these historical claims. The rumors that are just so extreme but form the entire backdrop of fear for an event like McGuire.
You're talking about the subterranean bases.
The DUMBs, deep underground military bases.
Yes. For decades, the whistleblower lore has been filled with these descriptions of massive hidden cities buried deep beneath the American landscape.
Not just bunkers.
No, we're talking about vast complexes allegedly connected by high-speed maglev tunnel networks, an entire secret infrastructure.
And it's what's supposedly inside these bases that makes the stories so powerful.
It's where they supposedly keep the hardware, the recovered craft, the advanced alien technology. But it's not just technology.
It's the occupants.
The sources claim they house non-human entities, some living, some captured, some preserved.
And there are even claims of joint research programs happening on there.
Highly secret human-alien programs.
Yes. What's the alleged purpose of that? Genetic engineering? Cross-species experimentation? It sounds like something out of a horror movie.
The theory, and it's a chilling one, is that it's a trade, a technological exchange. We give them access to our biology, to our genetic material.
And what do we get in return?
The secrets to their technology, advanced propulsion, energy sources. The fringe theories suggest these entities are either using our DNA for their own survival, or they're in the middle of some long-term project to understand us. We get the keys to the stars, but the price is access to our own biological code.
But the darkest rumors of all, they're not about collaboration, they're about conflict.
Yes, there are these persistent, terrifying stories of deadly firefights happening miles underground, skirmishes between our own special forces and non-human beings.
With casualties on both sides.
Exactly. These stories paint a picture not of peaceful scientific exchange, but of containment operations, of conflict, of control breaking down in the most secure facilities on Earth.
And this is the critical context for McGuire, because if any part of that dark folklore is true, if there's a history of violence and secrecy around these entities,
then the reaction of a lone sentry on a dark night who suddenly sees one, it's no longer a paranoid overreaction.
it becomes a trained, lethal response, part of an undeclared secret war.
And what's so compelling and so frustrating is that while officials will always dismiss these stories as pure fantasy, as science fiction, they just don't go away. The accounts are so persistent, and sometimes they're corroborated just for a moment by veterans with verifiable credentials. And that's what keeps them alive. It's the environment of absolute fear and consequence that defined the Cold War military mindset.
All right, let's plant our feet firmly on the ground. The year is 1978. We're in Burlington County, New Jersey, at this massive complex made up of Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base.
And you have to understand, this wasn't some sleepy remote outpost. This was a major hub of military activity.
A high-security zone with established, rigid protocols.
Absolutely. Fort Dix goes all the way back to World War I. It was a primary training and staging area for every major conflict in the 20th century. A huge Army installation.
And McGuire was its Air Force counterpart right next door.
Exactly. They were literally side by side, separated by nothing more than a simple chain link fence. They worked together constantly throughout the Cold War.
So you have Army and Air Force personnel crossing paths all the time.
All the time. Security staff, maintenance crews, military police. They were constantly crossing between the bases. It was one huge, shared operational space, even if it was run by two different branches.
And the terrain itself is part of the story.
It's crucial for the atmosphere. This is a rural area dominated by the legendary New Jersey pine barrens.
So you have these huge swaths of dark, dense forests, and then suddenly, flat, wide-open concrete runways and massive hangars.
It's an environment that's both deeply isolated and intensely watched. Any unexpected light, any person out of place would stand out immediately. It was the perfect stage for what was about to unfold.
And the curtain rises in the dead of night, January 18th, 1978. Where does it start?
It starts in the control tower at McGuire Air Force Base. The staff inside notice an anomaly, a blip on their radar screen.
A ghost.
A ghost. The first thing they do is run through procedure, check the flight schedules, check the training rosters. Nothing. No scheduled flights, no civilian aircraft in the area. This contact, this blip should not have been there.
So the next step is eyes on, visual confirmation.
Right. A technician grabs a pair of binoculars and steps out onto the external balcony of the tower just to do a visual sweep of the area.
And this is it. This is the moment the story shifts from a technical glitch to something real.
He's scanning the dark horizon, and his eyes catch a strange glow. He described it as a faint, almost ethereal light, and it was coming from the direction of the Fort Dix perimeter, near that shared fence line.
And then comes the detail that just locks it all in, the thing that makes it impossible to ignore.
The synchronization. He's barely focused on this weird light when it just winks out like someone flipped a switch.
And back inside the tower.
At the exact same moment the light vanished from his view, the radar contact vanished from their screens simultaneously.
That's incredible. That rules out a dozen mundane explanations right off the bat.
It rules out a glitch, a reflection, atmospheric interference. It implies that whatever this thing was, it had control over its visibility and its radar signature. It was either an incredibly sophisticated piece of our own tech, or it was something else entirely.
But even then, there was no panic.
Not at first, no. They just followed the book. The control tower team radioed over to Fort Dix security.
Hey, we saw something weird near your fence. Can you check it out?
Basically, yeah. They reported the anomaly and requested a patrol. And then, once the report was filed, the Air Force guys just went back to work, casually dismissed it.
They tossed the problem over the fence to the Army MPs. They had no idea. They had just set in motion a chain of events that would end in bloodshed. So now we're with the Army military police at Fort Dix. A call comes in from the Air Force tower next door. A weird light, a radar blip, now gone.
And you can imagine the reaction. It's the middle of the night. This sounds like a minor issue.
A faulty sensor, maybe some kids with a flashlight.
Exactly. The sources are clear. The MPs treated it as a low priority call. No big investigation was launched, no base-wide alert.
They just sent one guy.
A single asset. A lone police officer grabs the keys to his patrol vehicle and sets out for what he thinks is going to be a slow, boring, methodical patrol along the base perimeter.
The solitude, the quiet, it just makes what comes next so much more shocking.
He's driving along that gravel road that follows the chain link fence, windows probably cracked, listening to the night. And then he sees something that makes him slam on the brakes.
There it is.
Right there, hovering. Just a few feet above the ground, right next to the fence separating the two bases. A flying object.
And we have a description of this craft.
Up close, it was cylindrical, roughly the size of his patrol vehicle. So not a massive mothership, but big enough to be intimidating. It looked like it was made of dark metal.
But it was the other details, the sensory details, that just broke reality.
The surface wasn't just metal. It was emitting this muted red glow. But it wasn't a steady light. It was pulsing.
Pulsing.
Rhythmically. One witness later described it as looking almost as though it was alive and beating like a heart.
That's terrifying. That's organic and mechanical all at once. What about sound? That's the first thing a soldier would listen for.
He specifically rolled his window all the way down to listen for an engine, a jet, a propeller, even just the hum of a generator.
And he heard?
Nothing. Absolute silence.
Yeah.
Just the wind in the pines and maybe some distant animal noises from the barrens. The silence was the most unnatural thing about it. This metallic thing, the size of a car, just hanging in the air with no sound at all.
And the silence is broken.
By the sound of footsteps, scuffling in the dark. The sentry's eyes dart over and he sees a figure, a lone figure, running out of the shadows, dashing towards the craft.
And in his mind, with his Cold War training,
he connects the dots instantly. This is a foreign spy plane that's an enemy operative. He's witnessing an espionage attempt in real time, and he reacts based on his training.
He's out of the car.
Leaps out, draws his .45 sidearm, fires a single warning shot into the air, and screams at the figure to halt.
And the craft's reaction to the gunshot.
That's what confirmed this was nothing conventional. It didn't fly away. It didn't slowly ascend. It reacted with violence.
How so?
It accelerated straight up, vertically. In a split second, it shot into the night sky and was just gone, vanished. The pulsing red glow disappeared with it. He's left there in the sudden darkness, just him and the intruder.
The craft is gone, but the figure is still there.
Right. The sentry swings his flashlight around, trying to reacquire the target. He finds the figure, who's now running away from him, back toward the fence.
A pursuit on foot.
He takes off after it, shouting more warnings. But the figure's physical abilities were not human.
What happened?
As the figure reached the 7-foot-high chain-link fence, illuminated by the soldier's flashlight, it jumped.
Jumped the fence.
It wasn't a jump. The report says it vaulted high into the air with surprising agility. It cleared the fence with ease, effortlessly.
No human can do that. Not even an Olympic athlete.
No. That's the moment the sentry must have realized this wasn't a Russian spy, this was something else.
And it lands on the other side, on McGuire property, on an open runway.
It's running across the concrete now. The MP can't follow, he can't breach the fence himself. His protocol, his jurisdiction, ends right there. So he skids to a halt.
And he makes a decision.
He raises his weapon, steadies his aim in the dark, and he fires 5 rounds into the fleeing figure.
And he hits it.
Several rounds strike the figure in the torso. It collapses immediately. Face down on the cold, hard concrete. The chase was over.
So the shooting stops, the silence returns, the sentry, probably in shock, runs back to his vehicle. He has to raise the alarm.
He radios it in and then drives at high speed to the main gate of McGuire Air Force Base, where he's given immediate emergency access.
He leads the Air Force guards back to that spot on the runway where he saw the figure fall.
Right. And when he gets there, a small group of Air Force security police are already gathering, drawn by the sound of the shots. They're standing there, bewildered, looking down at the body.
And this is where the incident goes from a shooting to something else entirely.
It's the sensory details again. The first thing that hit all of them, before they even got a good look at the body, was the smell.
What kind of smell?
Overpowering, acrid. The sources all describe it the same way. Similar to that of ammonia. A sharp chemical stench that saturated the air.
That's not the smell of a human body.
Not at all. It was the first sign that this was profoundly, fundamentally wrong.
And then they get closer. They get their flashlights on the body lying on the runway. What did they see?
The descriptions, corroborated by multiple witnesses later, are just startlingly consistent.
Let's break it down. The size.
It was small. Roughly the size of a child. It had a very slender, almost frail-looking frame.
But the head.
The head was disproportionately large, much larger than it should have been for a body that size.
And the face? Did it have a face?
Barely. The reports say it was mostly devoid of features. No real nose to speak of, no obvious mouth. It was dominated by two things.
The eyes.
Two huge almond-shaped, pitch-black eyes. Reflective, deep, and utterly alien.
And the skin. This is the detail that completely rules out a person in a costume.
The witnesses all agree on this. The entire body was covered in a tough, gray-green hide. Not skin, but hide.
They describe it as
lizard-like, reptilian, with a leathery texture.
So you have this small, frail body with a huge head, black eyes, reptilian skin, and it smells of ammonia.
And it's lying dead on a U.S. Air Force runway with 5 bullet holes in its torso.
Can you just imagine that moment, the psychological whiplash for the sentry who pulled the trigger? Realizing he didn't shoot an enemy soldier, he shot this.
And for the other guards, just frozen there in their own headlights, the silence after the gunfire must have been deafening, filled with this one impossible question.
How in God's name do you report this up the chain of command?
There's no form for this. There's no protocol. The military is built to handle known threats. Insurgents, spies, equipment failure. An alien body creates an immediate, system-breaking crisis.
And in the middle of the Cold War, a crisis like that demands one thing above all else.
Absolute secrecy, total containment, before anyone else can find out.
Now, this entire story, this incredible, unbelievable event, it could have just vanished. Buried under a mountain of classified documents forever.
It almost did.
If it wasn't for one man, an insider who was there that night and decided to talk decades later, Major George Filer.
Filer is the key. And his position on the base gives his story immense credibility. He wasn't just some random airman.
What was his job?
He was an Air Force intelligence briefing officer. His specific role was to gather and compile intelligence reports for senior base commanders. Sometimes his briefings even went to the Senate.
So he was cleared for high-level information. He was trusted.
Deeply, which is what makes his account so powerful.
So his night begins around 4 a.m., a couple of hours after the shooting. He is driving onto the base for a shift, and he sees something unusual.
He sees vehicles and lights out on the runway, which is not normal for that time of night. He pulls over and asks one of the security guards what's going on.
And the guard's response is just incredible.
The guard leans in and tells him in a hushed voice that a sentry from Fort Dix had shot and killed an alien.
And Filer's first reaction.
He laughed. He thought it was a joke, some dark, early morning military humor.
But then something happens that makes him stop laughing.
He looks up into the dark sky, and he sees a C-141 Starlifter on its final approach, coming into land.
Now, for a civilian, that might not mean much, but for an Air Force officer like Filer,
it meant everything. The C-141 was a massive cargo plane. It was part of the Military Air Transport Service at MIATIS. You used it for heavy, long-haul strategic missions.
Transporting classified hardware or mass casualties.
Exactly. It was not a local plane. Seeing that specialized aircraft arrive unannounced in the middle of the night told Filer instantly that this was not a joke. This was a high-level external response. The big boys had been called in.
His skepticism just evaporated.
Gone. And a short time later, he's summoned by his commanding officer.
Who told him what?
He's told that the incident did happen, exactly as the guard described. And his initial orders are to start gathering all the information and prepare a formal briefing for higher command.
So he's doing his job. He starts interviewing people.
He talks to the MPs. He talks to the control tower staff. He's putting together this consistent, bizarre, unbelievable story. But then, just as he's about to get his hands on the physical evidence, the photos.
The door slams shut.
Hard. The entire process just halts.
The cover-up begins.
Yeah.
And it's swift and absolute.
Filer's access to the case is revoked. The order for him to compile the briefing is reversed. No explanation given.
A change in protocol.
That was the term used. It was a clear signal. A higher authority had stepped in, taken control, and the information was now restricted to a tiny select group. The narrative was being contained.
But Filer's an intelligence officer. He doesn't just give up.
He uses his contacts, his knowledge of the system. He manages to get a quick, unauthorized glance at the official incident report.
A DD Form 1569.
Yes, the official military police report. And seeing that form confirm that, from a legal and administrative standpoint, an incident involving the use of deadly force absolutely took place that night.
And this report also told him what happened to the evidence. To the body.
It confirmed the body had been loaded onto that C-141 Starlifter under heavy armed guard. and it listed the destination.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio.
The second he saw that name, he knew how serious this was.
Wright-Pat. In the world of UFO lore, that's like the Vatican. It's the rumored destination for everything.
And it wasn't just the body. The report also stated that the Army sentry who fired the shots, he was put on a plane and flown to Wright-Patterson as well for a formal debriefing.
So they take the evidence and they take the primary witness.
They removed them both from the scene. The rumor that circulated on the base for years was that the sentry was transferred to some classified facility, went through intense psychological evaluations, and never officially returned to Fort Dix.
It's the classic cover-up playbook.
It's a perfect example of a defined procedure. You secure the asset, and you isolate the human source of the story. You ensure maximum plausible deniability, just in case the story ever leaks.
So when Major Filer finally goes public with his story in his autobiography, decades later, in 2018, the media, naturally, went to the Air Force for comment.
And the Air Force response was silence. A firm no comment. Which, of course, just adds fuel to the fire.
Their silence forces everyone else to start digging to find other witnesses. And what they find is this classic split. You get corroboration on one side and total dismissal on the other.
It's the perfect historical puzzle. On the corroboration side, you have guys like former MP Jeff Morse.
He came forward and said he was there that night.
He claimed he was one of the guards who was on the runway with the body, and he backed up Filer's story on the key details.
It's skin.
He described it as leathery reptilian.
And the smell.
That overwhelming ammonia odor. These specific sensory details coming from two different witnesses years apart are very difficult to just invent.
But then you have the other side, the official dismissal.
Several other veterans, including a couple of former commanding officers who were at the base, came out and said the story was a complete fabrication, a rumor that got out of hand.
Their argument being
that an event this extraordinary, this massive, would be impossible to keep secret for so long. They insist they would have known about it.
So we're left with this standoff. Verifiable military personnel telling completely opposite stories.
Which means we have to critically look at the other explanations, the skeptical theories that could resolve this contradiction. Let's start with explanation number one, the elaborate hoax.
The prank theory.
Right. The foundation of this is that military bases have a long tradition of complex practical jokes, a way to fight boredom and stress.
So the theory is that a group of guards built a dummy, used some lights and sound effects, and completely fooled the lone sentry. Made him panic.
But if that's all it was, a prank that got out of hand, why the intense cover-up? Why is the Air Force still silent 40 years later?
Like embarrassment.
It would be profound. You don't want the world to know your highly trained security forces are vulnerable to a prank that they'll open fire on a dummy. Especially during the Cold War. You'd suppress the story to protect the institution's image, not to hide aliens.
But there's a huge hole in the hoax theory, isn't there?
The C-141 Starlifter. Are we really supposed to believe the military scrambled a massive strategic airlift asset and flew a dummy to a top-secret analysis facility just to hide a prank?
The response seems way out of proportion to the crime.
It just doesn't add up. Which brings us to a much more sophisticated skeptical theory. Explanation 2. The covert training exercise.
This one suggests the entire thing was a setup, an orchestrated, highly classified drill.
Designed by some external high-level unit to test the readiness and psychological reactions of the base personnel.
A test to see if a sentry would use lethal force against an ambiguous, potentially non-human threat.
In that scenario, the entity wasn't a simple dummy. It was a sophisticated animatronic or even a person in a highly advanced prosthetic suit. Something designed to look and feel real enough to provoke a genuine lethal response.
And the UFO story that grew out of it.
That could have been an intentional smokescreen. You classify the real exercise, a test of lethal force protocols, and you let this wild UFO legend grow around it. It's the perfect cover. Who's going to believe the alien story?
The problem with that theory, for me, are the details again. The ammonia smell, the leathery reptilian skin. It just seems so specific, so needlessly complex for a training drill.
Unless the purpose of the drill was to prepare them for something they actually expected to encounter.
Which brings us right back to square one. It brings us to explanation 3, that the story is credible. That it happened more or less as Filer and Morse described it.
And the reasons it holds up, why it resists being dismissed, come down to that specificity and consistency.
You have real people with real service records who were really there. You have the consistent sensory details, the pulsing red light, the silent craft, the impossible vault over the fence, the smell, the skin.
And you have the trump card, the Wright-Patterson connection.
That's the single most compelling piece of circumstantial evidence.
Because if you did recover a non-human biological entity, there is a historical and logistical logic to sending it to Wright-Patterson. It aligns perfectly with the base's established role as the center for analyzing unconventional technology.
But couldn't that just be part of the legend? A detail added later because everyone knows Wright-Pat is the UFO place.
It's possible. But think about the military bureaucracy. This is just a local problem, a weird dead animal, or a prank gone wrong. They could have handled it on base. Incinerate it, bury the report.
But they didn't. They mobilized a huge plane from an entirely different command.
The fact that they escalated it to a national level asset and sent it to their premier Foreign Technology Analysis Center suggests that what they recovered, whether it was a prosthetic from a drill or a genuine body, was considered an asset of such incredibly high value that it required a level of security and analysis that only a place like Wright-Patterson could provide.
Let's stay on Wright-Patterson for a minute because understanding its history is key to understanding why that name gives the McGuire story so much weight.
Its identity was forged right after World War II. It became the primary destination for all captured enemy technology.
German jets, Japanese planes, Russian missiles.
Everything. We brought it all to Wright-Pat, took it apart, and figured out how it worked. It established the base as the nation's headquarters for reverse engineering foreign tech.
So when the UFO phenomenon began in the late 1940s, it was the natural place to send the problem.
It was the logical choice. So Wright-Patterson became the home of Project Sign, then Project Grudge, and finally the famous Project Blue Book. For decades, it was the official center of military UFO research.
And even though Blue Book publicly concluded there was nothing to see here, the rumor has always been that the really good cases, the sensitive ones, were siphoned off, kept secret.
Exactly. And that suspicion is what fuels the entire reverse engineering theory. The idea that the program just transitioned smoothly from studying Nazi jets to studying, well, something else.
And of course, the foundational myth of Wright-Patterson is Roswell.
The persistent, unkillable rumor that the debris and the bodies recovered from the 1947 Roswell crash were secretly flown to and stored at Wright-Patterson. That deep mythology makes it the one and only plausible destination for the body recovered at McGuire in 1978. It fits the pattern.
Now let's pull the camera back a bit, geographically. McGuire Air Force Base is right on the edge of the New Jersey Pine Barrens, this vast, famously weird and mysterious wilderness.
The location itself is part of the lore. The Pine Barrens has a long history of strange sightings. The Jersey Devil, ghost lights, strange creatures, and yes, a lot of unexplained aerial objects.
So does its location play a role in what happened?
There are two main theories about that. The first is that the Pine Barrens itself is some kind of anomaly.
A window area.
Some people believe it's a place where the boundaries between dimensions are thinner, or that it has some unique geological or energetic property that attracts these phenomena. In that case, the McGuire encounter was just bad luck. An entity crossed over too close to the base and ran into a soldier.
But the other theory is that it wasn't an accident at all, that the base itself was the target.
This theory suggests that these craft are drawn to our military installations, especially ones involved in advanced or nuclear-capable operations. They're here to watch us.
Surveillance.
And if that's the case, then the craft hovering by the fence wasn't lost. It was on a mission. And the figure running towards it was an operative, a scout, trying to get back to its ship.
And that line of thinking leads to a really disturbing thought about the entity that was shot.
If it was an operative, and the craft was there watching the base, then maybe they've been back.
Looking for their fallen comrade.
It completely reframes the event. It means 1978 wasn't an ending. It was a hostile first contact that created a reason for them to keep coming back. Maybe the surveillance since then hasn't just been passive observation. Maybe it's been a search and recovery mission.
And this incident at McGuire, no matter how you interpret it, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It fits into a disturbing historical pattern of fatal encounters between the U.S. military and UFOs.
The history of secrecy around this is long and deep.
You can go back to 1956, Sergeant Jonathan Lovett at the White Sands Missile Range.
His body was found horribly mutilated. A witness claimed he'd been pulled into a strange craft by a snake-like tube. The official explanation was essentially, we don't know.
Or the famous case of Captain Thomas Mantell in 1948 over Kentucky.
a National Guard pilot who died chasing a UFO. He was ordered to break off, but he refused. He pursued it to an altitude his plane couldn't handle, and he crashed.
The common thread in the Mantell case, the Levette case, and the McGuire case
is military personnel dying while responding to an incursion by an unidentified object. And in every case, the official story that follows is incomplete. It fails to address the core circumstances, which just feeds the accusations of a cover-up.
Which makes the government's current attempts at transparency look so flimsy.
It feels inconsistent, doesn't it? They'll show Congress a video from a fighter jet, but they will not acknowledge or release the files on these key historical events where their own people died.
So until they do, until they open up the files on McGuire, on Levette, on Mantell, we're left with nothing but shadows.
We're left with fragments, witness stories, and official silence. The full picture of what happened that night is locked away, and its meaning has been managed, hidden, and reinterpreted for almost half a century. #tag outro.
So after digging through all of this, what are we left with? A fragmented story. A piece of history that is defined more by what we don't know than what we do. It's a puzzle built from official silence and these powerful, conflicting eyewitness accounts.
And the final truth of what happened on that runway depends entirely on what those in power decided to hide away that night.
What they chose to ship off in a cargo plane, never to be seen again.
And so we'll leave you with this final thought to carry with you out into the dark. Just assume, for a moment, that the story is true. An unarmed, non-human being was simply trying to get back to his ship, and it was shot and killed by a nervous human soldier following his training.
That act would have set a precedent.
A terrifying one. If there are other intelligences out there watching us, how did they interpret what happened on that cold winter's night in 1978? What conclusion did they draw about our species? About our readiness to use lethal force against something we don't understand?
The Sentry's actions, whether justified or not, may have been our first official statement in an interstellar dialogue, and that statement was an act of violence.
And until we know how they responded, or what they've been doing in our skies ever since, that night in New Jersey remains a chilling and perhaps tragic point of first fatal contact between their world and ours.
We'll leave you with that thought. Keep digging.